Chapter 196. Eh, do you think that Luo Mu Xiao who has a grudge with you will come? The girl next to her asked. Lu Yinyu was annoyed when she heard Luo Mu Xiao's name. I don't know either. She will probably come to this kind of event. Mo Tingyuan's eyes kept scanning the crowd, hoping to see Luo Mu Xiao. Actually, he didn't know what Luo Mu Xiao looked like. Gu Xingyin came a little late. Actually, she wasn't that late. When she came, the event hadn't started yet. It was just that the others had arrived earlier, so she seemed to be especially late. The receptionist at the door was also a staff member of the game company. When she saw Gu Xingyin, her eyes lit up. Who was this person? She didn't appear in the appearance contest? This girl was much prettier than the winner of the appearance contest. Could she be from the player PK group? Then, Gu Xingyin smiled faintly at her. I am Luo Mu Xiao. The receptionist was stunned for a moment. She also played Spirit Sword Celestial. Of course, she had heard of Luo Mu Xiao's name. But wasn't Luo Mu Xiao ugly? She was actually so pretty. Although she was surprised, she didn't suspect Gu Xingyin's identity, because she took out the ID card given by Spirit Sword Celestial. Every player was limited to one ID card. It was also an ID card that was bound to their real name. Mo Tingyuan's eyes immediately fell on the girl who walked in. It wasn't just him. The moment Gu Xingyin walked into the hall, everyone's eyes fell on her. She was wearing a snow-white waist-length dress. Her figure was slim, and her hair was slightly tied up. She was incomparably beautiful. Who is this? She's definitely not from the appearance contest. I've seen all the beauties in the appearance contest. There's no one like her. Could it be another player from our PK group? Sure enough, experts are hidden deeply. Lu Yinyu also looked at the girl who easily took everyone's attention. Her heart was filled with unwillingness. But no matter how unwilling she was, she couldn't help but admit that she was too far away from her. Gu Xingyin's eyes swept across the crowd. She helplessly found that she only recognized Mountain River One Sword. She walked towards Mountain River One Sword. Mo Tingyuan watched as the girl walked through the crowd toward him. It's her. She was clearly the girl he had met in the restaurant before. Hello, Mountain River Single Sword. I am Luo Mu Xiao. The white-dressed girl spoke softly. However, the words she spoke shocked everyone present. Luo Mu Xiao. Was it the PK leaderboard's number one, Luo Mu Xiao? Many players looked at Gu Xingyin, and then looked up at the expressionless swordswoman in white on the huge LED screen poster. How low profile did he have to be in order to change his appearance to that of his in-game appearance? Mo Tingyuan was also surprised, but he quickly stabilized his thoughts and stretched out a hand. Little Xiao. What a coincidence. Only Gu Xingyin understood what he meant. Gu Xingyin shook his hand gently. Mo Tingyuan only felt that the touch was warm and soft, and he did not want to let go at all. After knowing that Gu Xingyin's identity was actually Luo Mu Xiao, the atmosphere in the hall became lively. Many people rushed forward to greet her. God Luo Mu Xiao. I didn't expect you to be so beautiful in real life. God Luo Mu Xiao, I'm your fan. Your consecutive kills were so cool. Luo Mu Xiao. Lu Yinyu stood outside the crowd. She looked at Luo Mu Xiao who was surrounded by everyone, and almost ground her teeth to pieces. Chapter 197. She was Luo Mu Xiao. She was actually Luo Mu Xiao. How could she be Luo Mu Xiao? However, no matter how unwilling and conflicted Lu Yinyu was, no one cared about her thoughts. Mo Tingyuan and Gu Xingyin sat together. He was silent for a moment before saying, What happened to your leg? He didn't forget the first time he saw Gu Xingyin. She was in a wheelchair. Gu Xingyin smiled faintly. I got into a car accident and couldn't stand up for a while. Mo Tingyuan turned his head to look at the side of the girl's face. The soft light shone on her smooth and flawless skin, making her look even more lustrous. After interacting with Luo Mu Xiao, one would realize that she wasn't as cold as she was in the game. Mo Tingyuan. He suddenly said, That's my name. Gu Xingyin blinked. Shen Xiao from Luo Mu Xiao. At this moment a coquettish voice was heard. Are you really Luo Mu Xiao? Gu Xingyin raised her head and looked at the girl with a faint smile. Lu Yinyu? Lu Yinyu only felt that Gu Xingyin's voice was indescribably mocking. She hated it in her heart, but said with a smile, I didn't expect you to be so beautiful in real life. Why haven't I heard you talk about it before? You made people think that your appearance is the same as in the game. Gu Xingyin smiled faintly. After all, I'm different from you. I like to speak with my strength. She was implying that Lu Yinyu didn't have the ability and could only rely on her face. A few players around them snickered. Mo Tingyuan watched as Gu Xingyin calmly uttered such vicious words. A hint of a smile flashed across his eyes. Lu Yinyu's face turned green, but she suppressed it and forced a smile. Luo Mu Xiao Xiao. I have some grudges with you in the game, but it's just a game after all. There's no need to be so serious. Why don't we both take a step back and make peace? She sneered in her heart. Luo Mu Xiao Xiao. I've already displayed my stance. Could it be that you Luo Mu Xiao Xiao still want to be overbearing in front of everyone? If Luo Mu Xiao Xiao agreed, then he would have to suffer in silence. In the future, he would not be able to target her in the game. Otherwise, it would be like slapping his own face. If she didn't agree, that would be even better. She could let everyone see just how petty a woman Luo Mu Xiao Xiao was. Gu Xingyin sighed in his heart. This woman really wouldn't give up until all hope was gone. However, such a small trick was not enough to stump her. She glanced at Lu Yinyu and was about to speak when Mo Tingyuan stopped her. He coldly glanced at Lu Yinyu. Only when both sides are evenly matched can they negotiate. Little Lu Yinyu, what do you have to make peace with little Xiao? He didn't show the slightest bit of courtesy, just because the other party was a girl. Lu Yinyu's face alternated between red and white. She didn't think that Mountain River Sword would be so ungentlemanly. Wasn't he afraid that his reputation would be affected if word got out? Seeing Lu Yinyu leave in a sorry state, Gu Xingyin suddenly whispered to the person beside her. Aren't you afraid that if word got out, people would say that you're ungentlemanly and bully a girl? Mo Tingyuan smiled indifferently. I'm a man. I won't lose a piece of meat if people say that. He suddenly looked at Gu Xingyin seriously. But little Xiao, I don't want you to suffer because of anyone. Chapter 198. After listening to Spirit Sword Immortal's official spokesperson's speech in the morning, it was basically free time for the players. A few of the more active players suggested that everyone go out to play, but Gu Xingyin was not interested and refused. I'll send you back. Mo Tingyuan got up and left with Gu Xingyin without any explanation. Sigh, it's so boring. The two most handsome and beautiful guys didn't even come to support us. The player who gave the suggestion complained. Look at Mountain River God. He has a beautiful girl by his side. A player revealed a you know what I mean smile. As soon as he finished speaking, the few of them revealed a tacit smile at the same time. Mo Tingyuan opened the car door for Gu Xingyin and leaned over to help her fasten her seatbelt. When the familiar smell enveloped her, Gu Xingyin still felt a sense of relief, even though she already knew what was going to happen. Mo Tingyuan looked at the woman who was close to him. The two of them were very close to each other. He only needed to lean over slightly, and he could touch her skin. Her skin was white and smooth. He did not need to touch it to know that it must be very good. Mo Tingyuan only felt that his throat was a little dry. He took a deep breath without batting an eyelid. He sat back in the driver's seat. The car was moving at a moderate speed. Mo Tingyuan recalled the chasing skills that Zhang Yang had taught him. Then one by one they flashed through his mind. He realized that none of them seemed to be suitable for Xiao Xiao. I'm here. Gu Xingyin spoke. Her eyes were filled with a smile that Mo Tingyuan could not see. She knew this man very well. He did not speak along the way, and his thoughts were somewhat unfocused. He was probably thinking about how to talk to her. Mo Tingyuan unwillingly stopped the car. For the first time, he cursed the smooth traffic in J City. Seeing that Gu Xingyin unfastened her seatbelt and was about to leave, his mind heated up. He reached out his hand to stop her from opening the car door. When he met the other party's puzzled eyes, Mo Tingyuan realized that he was too impatient. However, since he had already made a move, there was no reason to take it back. He adjusted his expression. Xiao Xiao, do you have a boyfriend? If not, please allow me to pursue you. To the point. Gu Xingyin seemed to be very surprised. She glanced at Mo Tingyuan and saw that he was looking at her attentively. His ink-black eyes were filled with deep affection. She didn't say anything. Mo Tingyuan only felt that his heart was hanging high up in the air, and he was extremely hesitant. Xiao Xiao. He opened his mouth and called out to her when he saw that she was going to remain silent until the end of time. Gu Xingyin seemed to have come back to her senses when he called her. Her face was still calm, but Mo Tingyuan saw that her ears were slightly red. First question, no. The second question. She paused for a moment. The second question is your business. She looked at Mo Tingyuan calmly. Can I get out of the car now? Mo Tingyuan saw that the tips of her ears had turned red, and her eyes were filled with joy. He considerately opened the car door for her. After watching Gu Xingyin go upstairs, Mo Tingyuan drove home in a good mood. Judging from Xiao Zhao's appearance, it was clear that she had feelings for him, wasn't it? Gu Xingyin was also in a good mood. When she went online the next day, as expected, a certain man was already waiting there. Xiao Xiao. He looked at her with a smile. Do you have time? It seemed that after yesterday, this man had let go of his last layer of scruples and openly told everyone that his mountain river sword was pursuing Luo Mu Xiao Xiao. Chapter 199. Luo Mu Xiao Xiao was on fire. She used to be very popular too. With her powerful skills, she was able to kill a lot of players and was ranked first on the PK leaderboard. This time she was popular because of her looks. A player from the PK group, who went to the player exchange conference, posted the photos of that day on the forum. Then, everyone knew that Luo Mu Xiao, who was ranked first on the PK leaderboard, was not as ugly as she was in the game. On the contrary, she was a delicate and beautiful beauty. Speaking of which, those people were also strange. Before Luo Mu Xiao Xiao's photos were exposed, Lu Yinyu's fans did not seem to treat her as a girl like Lu Yinyu. They wantonly insulted and attacked her. But this time, when the photos were released, these voices were basically silenced. It was as if they instantly realized that Luo Mu Xiao Xiao, who defied the heavens in the game, was just a slender and weak girl who needed to be protected in real life. Regarding this situation, Gu Xingyin only wanted to say, I'm convinced of this superficial world. She was currently doing a quest with Mountain and River's sword. Mountain and River's sword never hid the fact that he was pursuing Luo Mu Xiao Xiao, due to the fact that both of them did not hide their actions and were too well known. Within a few days, everyone knew that both of them were moving towards the real world. Many male players who were interested in Luo Mu Xiao beat their chests and stomped their feet. They were jealous of Mountain and River's sword for being the first to get close to her. On one hand, they were not careful when choosing the server, and lost the opportunity to get close to their goddess. On the other hand, their skills were not good enough, and could not participate in the player exchange conference. Who knows, when they meet in real life, their goddess might take a fancy to them. Of course, they did not know that from a long time ago. Other than that man, no one else would have this opportunity. Xiao Xiao, do you have time to eat with me in the afternoon? The man on the phone spoke gently. Gu Xingyin did not decline. Mo Tingyuan chose the restaurant where they met for the first time. The first time I saw you, it was here. Mo Tingyuan seemed to be a little emotional. How did he feel when he saw Gu Xingyin at that time? It was very strange. He had never seen this person before. But somehow he felt a special sense of familiarity. Of course, he did not try to strike up a conversation with Zhang Yang. If he did, Zhang Yang would have looked at him with disdain. What era is it now? Why are you still using such old-fashioned methods? Later on, he was gradually attracted to Luo Mu Xiao Xiao in the game. In the past, he had scoffed at the so-called online romance. Thousands of miles away, just based on chatting on the internet, could he like someone? However, when he fell in love with her, he realized that he didn't need any special conditions to be moved. He was fascinated by Luo Mu Xiao Xiao's every move and the way she handled things. Until the players' conference, when he saw that Luo Mu Xiao Xiao was the girl that he was strangely familiar with, no one knew how happy he was in his heart. Am I considered to have passed the test now? He asked half-jokingly as he placed the peeled shrimp on the person's plate. Gu Xingyin enjoyed the man's attentive service with peace of mind. Hearing this sentence, she glanced at him. So. The man laughed. Then I'll have to work harder. Gu Xingyin nodded seriously. That's true. It's my first time being pursued. It's your honor. Mr. M.O., who was pursuing someone for the first time, smiled faintly. Yes, it's my honor. Chapter 200. Luo Mu Xiaoxiao and Mountain and River One Sword got married. Originally, Mountain and River One Sword didn't intend to be so high profile. However, after he blocked the 29th person, who came to ask Luo Mu Xiaoxiao for advice, and gave a particularly enthusiastic advice, a certain man finally couldn't bear it anymore. 100 gold for a world announcement gift box. Mountain and River One Sword, this nouveau riche, spammed the screen for 2 whole hours. He wanted to let everyone know that Luo Mu Xiaoxiao was now one of Mountain and River One Sword's people. Fleeting observation. God is really rich. This will probably cost me a few months of living expenses. Gu Xingyin smiled at the man's childish behavior. Xiaoxiao, have you received the news from Spirit Sword Immortal? Mountain and River One Sword asked. Gu Xingyin knew what he was talking about. About the endorsement? Mountain and River One Sword nodded. He and Gu Xingyin were finally chosen by Spirit Sword Immortal to be the game's spokesperson. Regarding this, the game company was quite satisfied. Their appearance didn't lose to any star, and their PK was even more outstanding. This kind of player was definitely the first choice for the spokesperson. The two people thought about it, and decided to accept this endorsement. After the two sides finalized all the matters, Spirit Sword Immortal officially released this news, and posted a huge poster with the two people as the prototype. Of course, the white-clothed female swordsman in the picture used Gu Xingyin's face. Once the poster came out, it caused a violent response. Many people expressed that they were looking forward to the game company's promotional video. There were also some people who were not reconciled, such as Lu Yinyu. Soon, a debunking post appeared on the forum. The content revolved around Spirit Sword Immortal's #1 PK player, Luo Mu Xiaoxiao. It said that her character was not only bad, her face was also plastic surgery. The OP said that Luo Mu Xiaoxiao's face in the game was too different from her appearance in real life. Would there really be a girl who would be so weird as to make herself ugly to that extent? That's right, she questioned Luo Mu Xiaoxiao's plastic surgery. The whole post was the OP's subjective speculation without any real evidence. However, there was really a wave of people who followed the trend and started to criticize Luo Mu Xiaoxiao. Of course, Luo Mu Xiaoxiao still had a lot of supporters. Both sides argued in the forum. This matter ended with Luo Mu Xiaoxiao's reply. The replies were as follows. Firstly, she had released a few photos of herself since she was a child. It was easy to see that Shen Xiaoxiao was a beautiful girl since she was a child. The rumors of plastic surgery were purely rumors. Secondly, he stripped the OP's layers of identities and exposed the IP address, as well as the OP's personal information. It was little Lu Yinyu. In the end, Luo Mu Xiaoxiao made a domineering statement. She didn't care about the other servers. But in Riverside Immortal and Xiaolu Yinyu, there was either her or her. Apart from that, another anonymous post appeared on the forum. The post was a picture of Lu Yinyu growing up. Normal people could tell at a glance that if Lu Yinyu had grown up naturally, there was no way she could have grown up to look like this. It was obvious who had undergone plastic surgery. Anyone with a discerning eye would know that the post at the back was definitely related to Luo Mu Xiaoxiao. But no one was able to dig it out. Mountain River Sword had not been in the game for the past 2 days. At first, he did not know what was going on the forums, until he heard the news from Laughing in the Wind. His expression turned completely cold. That night, Lu Yinyu received a lawyer's letter. This lawyer's letter was also posted on the forums, pointing out that Lu Yinyu was suspected of maliciously slandering others. Mountain River Sword did not hide himself. He wanted to tell everyone that he was supporting Luo Mu Xiaoxiao. Chapter 201. Luo Mu Xiaoxiao was a woman of her words. As long as she heard that Lu Yinyu was online, she would force a PK. Bloody Battle was no longer as strong as before. Bloody Battle didn't have much energy to care about Lu Yinyu. Lu Yinyu had completely disappeared from the game. Of course, she might have just changed her face, changed her identity, or even changed her server to continue playing the game. No matter what, Lu Yinyu's ID, this face, definitely wouldn't dare to appear in this game. Actually, to Gu Xingyin and Mo Tingyuan, Lu Yinyu was just an insignificant character. It wasn't worth their effort. During this time, the two of them were preparing for the game company's promotional video. Very good. The person in charge of filming them was a famous photographer. In order to create an effect, Spirit Sword Immortals officials had spent a lot of money and invited a famous photography team in the industry. Even though the photographer was used to seeing all kinds of celebrities, when he saw Mo Tingyuan and Gu Xingyin, he was still amazed by their looks. When they started filming, Mo Tingyuan was still okay. However, Gu Xingyin completely amazed him. He even asked Gu Xingyin if she had any experience as a model. The answer he got was of course no. Shen Xiaoxiao used to be in school. After the car accident, she had closed herself off. She definitely didn't have any experience in this area. The photographer couldn't help but admit that some talents were innate. In the camera, Gu Xingyin's every movement and glance was just right. Even many celebrities in the entertainment industry couldn't compare to her. Knowing the photographer's thoughts, Gu Xingyin just laughed secretly. Shen Xiaoxiao didn't have any experience, but she had experienced the life of the movie queen Wan Qi. The game company was very satisfied with the finished product. On the day of Chinese Valentine's Day, they released the latest promotional video. The effect was more popular than expected. The official website was simply flooded with enthusiastic players. Many people were shouting that the video was too beautiful. Any screenshot could be used as a desktop. Of course, there were more fans who were purely attracted by the looks of the male and female leads. There were also many people who said that on Chinese Valentine's Day, the game's public display of affection was good. After that, according to the statistics of the game's backend, after this promotional video was released on various major platforms, the number of players in the game increased by 30%. Even if they hired a popular A-lister, they might not be able to achieve such a heaven-defying effect. At this moment, Gu Xingyin was with Mo Tingyuan, enjoying a candlelight dinner that couples loved the most. The big screen beside them was playing the promotional video for their endorsement. This video was about a beautiful love story. In the end, of course, the two of them lived happily together. The swordsman in white used the sword in his hand as a betrothal gift and asked the swordswoman if she was willing to marry him. That incomparably cold and exquisite woman did not answer directly. Instead, she reached out and took off the jade pendant that had never left her waist and handed it to him. Little Xiao, the man sitting opposite her, suddenly put down the tableware in his hand and looked at her with burning eyes. Gu Xingyin had a premonition in her heart. She stared at the man quietly. Mo Tingyuan's movements were very slow but firm. He took out the exquisite small box that he had prepared long ago. I don't have a sword as a betrothal gift. I only want to use this ring to tie you down for life. Chapter 202. The man looked at Gu Xingyin nervously. Gu Xingyin suddenly smiled. She pretended to be troubled and said, "But I don't have a jade pendant to give you. What should I do?" Mo Tingyuan was stunned for a few seconds before he realized what she meant. He looked at Gu Xingyin, who was smiling at him. He could not suppress the joy in his heart. He stood up and pulled her into his arms. After a while, he calmed down and relaxed the person in his arms. He leaned his forehead against hers and said, "Xiao, I'm very happy." Gu Xingyin raised her hand and touched his face. She said softly, "Yes, I'm very happy too." It was not known who started it first. Their breaths were intertwined and they were inseparable. When the kiss ended, Gu Xingyin's face was already red. Mo Tingyuan pecked her lips reluctantly and put her down. Neither of them was in the mood to continue eating. Mo Tingyuan drove her home. Mo Tingyuan hugged her tightly in his arms and let her feel his passion. He whispered in her ear, "I really want to eat you up." Mo Tingyuan said softly in her ear, "I really want to eat you up." Gu Xingyin suddenly had a naughty thought. He saw her clear eyes sweep up from the corner of her eyes, which were instantly filled with seduction. She tiptoed and whispered in Mo Tingyuan's ear, "Then you can try." Mo Tingyuan only felt a wave of heat spreading from his ear to his lower abdomen. It was almost burning him. He tried his best to control himself. He clenched his teeth and looked at the naughty girl. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. "Just you wait. When the time comes, I'll let you have a good try." The man's actions were indeed fast. His parents were overjoyed when they heard that their son had a girl he liked. They wanted to have grandchildren. Both parties met. Gu Xingyin was familiar with dealing with the elders. Mo Tingyuan's parents thought that this girl was good-looking, had an outstanding temperament, and was well-educated. They were instantly satisfied, especially Mo Yichen's mother. When she heard that Shen Xiaoxiao's parents had passed away in a car accident 2 years ago, she pitied her even more. The two of them quickly decided on a wedding date. However, Zhang Yang had gone abroad for a month due to some urgent matters. When he came back, he found out that his best friend was about to get married. No way. Master Mo, aren't you a little too fast? Zhang Yang was stunned. Yes, I feel uneasy if I don't make her mine. Mo Tingyuan replied seriously. Zhang Yang felt as if his heart had been broken by 10,000 points. Young Master Mo, can you let me meet God Fallen Tree someday? Zhang Yang said. I'm her loyal fan. Mo Tingyuan nodded. There's no need to reschedule. Little Xiao will come over to have dinner with me later. The two of them were in a cafe that they frequented. Zhang Yang was bored to death as he looked out of the cafe. At the same time, he was secretly wondering how God Fallen Tree rustling looked like. He suddenly straightened his body and looked outside the glass door. Young Master Mo, look. Isn't this the beauty we saw at that restaurant? I didn't know that she could walk. Zhang Yang looked at the beauty who stopped walking. Then, she pushed the door open and walked into the cafe that he was in. Then, after looking around, he walked over to Wang Zhong's side. He was a little excited. Young Master Mo, look. The beauty is walking towards us. Do you think that she has taken a fancy to me? Do I look handsome today? He did not hear Mo Tingyuan's reply. He looked over and found that Mo Tingyuan was looking at him with a smile. Chapter 203. Before Zhang Yang could figure out the meaning of the smile, the beauty had already walked to their table. Then he saw his friend stand up and call out, Little Xiao. Zhang Yang felt his brain short-circuiting for a moment. Little Xiao. Could it be the Little Xiao that he knew? What did he say just now? Did this beauty take a fancy to him? Zhang Yang did not dare to look at his friend's face. Little Xiao, let me introduce you. This is a smile in the wind. Gu Xingyin blurted out the answer immediately. Zhang Yang was instantly energized. Sister-in-law, you know me? Gu Xingyin smiled and said, After all, it's rare to see people like you who don't change their appearance when playing the game. Zhang Yang looked at the beautiful woman in front of him and said in his heart, It's rare to see people who ugly themselves to that extent when playing the game. Since everyone was familiar with each other in the game world, there was not much restraint in the real world. Zhang Yang was also an extroverted person, so it did not take long for him to get along with Gu Xingyin. After dinner, Mo Tingyuan sent her home. Zhang Yang sighed and said, Young Master Mo, you're really lucky. You just casually fell in love with someone in the game. And you got such a beautiful woman. I'm really jealous of you. Zhang Yang sighed. Mo Tingyuan did not answer him. Instead, he drove to a place. Zhang Yang sensed that the route was not right. He had a bad feeling in his heart. Young Master Mo, where are you going? Mo Tingyuan's face was calm, but the words that came out of his mouth made him shiver. I haven't exercised for a long time. Accompany me to practice boxing later. Zhang Yang felt hopeless. He knew that Mo Tingyuan, this narrow-minded man, would not let him go just because of his cheap mouth. The next day, Gu Xingyin saw that Win's smile's resentment was about to break through the network, so she asked. Win's smile drifted past her like a ghost. It's nothing. I asked for it. Even if I have to kneel, I still have to stand. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Mountain River Sword walked to her side. Don't worry about him. This guy will go crazy twice a month. The two got married in a low-key manner. Of course, this low profile was only in the game. The wedding in real life was still very grand. After all, the Mo family was not a small family. If they kept a low profile, others would only look down on Gu Xingyin the bride. Mo Tingyuan finally had the right to use the ring to bind his bride for the rest of her life. And Gu Xingyin also tasted the consequences of her mouth. On their wedding night, Mo Tingyuan used his actions to show his determination to eat her up. This crazy man tormented her for almost an entire night, leaving her weak the next day. She had no doubt that if it weren't for the fact that the two of them were currently living in the Mo family's mansion and had to wake up in the morning to have breakfast with her parents, he wouldn't have let her off. Shen Xiaoxiao's life was very happy. When she was young, she suffered a great tribulation. But after that, her luck changed, and she met the right person in her life. From then on, he lived a prosperous and healthy life, with a harmonious family and a complete family of children. Everyone who knew her was praising her for her good fortune. That day, her granddaughter woke her grandparents up, but she found that there was no response. She pushed the door open and found the two elders lying there quietly, holding hands. They were no longer breathing. Chapter 204. In a chaotic space, the man who had been sitting quietly opened his eyes. There was no object blocking his view, but his face always seemed to be covered in layers of chaos, making people unable to see clearly. His eyes were like the chaos that was everywhere around him. At a glance, it seemed as if everything in the world was in his eyes, but when you looked again, you would find that there was actually nothing in his eyes. Shengyin, he whispered in a low voice, a trace of a smile in his eyes. The whole world was suddenly filled with spring wind, and thousands of flowers bloomed. Immediately, he closed his eyes again, and everything returned to silence. Gu Xingyin opened her eyes in a pure white room. If it weren't for the furniture here, she would almost think that this was the space where the system was. White ceiling, white curtains, white furniture, white bed. Looking around, the whole room was a dazzling white. She sorted out the memories in her mind, got up from the bed and looked in the mirror. The girl in the mirror had an exceptionally beautiful face, skin whiter than snow, and eyebrows picturesque. But there was no expression on her face, and there was no fluctuation in her dark eyes. This wasn't a cold personality, but this girl named Ning Zhao was born to be autistic. In her world, she only saw what she wanted. The protagonist of this world was Ning Zhao. Although she was autistic, she was born in a family that loved their daughter as much as their life. Her parents didn't give up on their daughter because of her congenital defect, but spent countless time and energy to patiently guide her, trying to let her live like a normal person. Hard work paid off. Under the guidance of a well-known doctor and the care from her family, Ning Zhao's autism didn't worsen like many patients, such as mania. She was especially quiet, and didn't respond to many things around her. When she sat there, she was as beautiful as an oil painting. No one would think that such a girl would be autistic. When Ning Zhao was 5 years old, she was discovered to have an excellent talent in piano, and a rare interest. Her parents were ecstatic, because if she could be interested in something, then the chances of her recovery in the future would be greatly increased. They hired the best tutor for Ning Zhao, the most professional doctor, and gave her the warmest care. If things continued like this, Ning Zhao might slowly be able to live like a normal person. However, when she was 16, something happened to her parents. Her close family friend took her over to raise her, but Ning Zhao was very uncooperative after learning of her parents' death. She rejected everyone, and her illness became more and more serious. She could only calm down when she was playing the zither. In this world, the supporting female lead was a part-time piano tutor hired by the Tang family, who had brought Ning Zhao over. That girl, Yang Huiying, was an ordinary college student. She originally came to the Tang family to be a tutor, but she fell in love with the Tang family's second young master, Tang Zhongyi. However, the difference in status between the two of them was too great. She didn't have the ability to attract her. Until she saw Ning Zhao. Ning Zhao's piano talent was unparalleled. Her world was too simple. She used to have parents, but now she only had the piano. However, Yang Huiying turned her attention to her only hope. Chapter 205. She approached Ning Zhao, stole her work, took it to a world-class competition, and successfully won the championship. She succeeded in becoming a piano genius in everyone's eyes. Because Ning Zhao never contacted the outside world, the Tang family did not know about it. And Ning Zhao herself would not expose her. But Yang Huiying was afraid. She always felt that as long as Ning Zhao was alive, what she did might be found out. So, she used a crazy trick to break Ning Zhao's hands, so that she could never play the piano again. Ning Zhao went crazy. The only thing left in her world was the piano. But even that last bit of comfort was about to be snuffed out by someone. Finally, when the servants of the Tang family did not notice, Ning Zhao broke the mirror in the bedroom and ended her life. Yang Huiying, the culprit, became a hot new star in the music festival with her composition. She lived a glorious life. Gu Xingyin came to this world when the Tang family came to inform Ning Zhao of the death of her parents. Unsurprisingly, the young master of the Tang family would come to pick her up soon. Tang Zhongyi drove to a quiet villa on the mountain. Today he came to pick up the daughter of a family friend. His brother was supposed to come today, but his eldest brother had something to do, so he gave the task to him. That girl. Tang Zhongyi had a headache about what to say later. It was said that the only daughter of Uncle Ning and his wife was a natural pianist. When his parents asked him to come over, they told him to explain the situation as tactfully as possible and not to irritate her. He parked the car and rang the doorbell. The nanny who was responsible for taking care of Ning Zhao had already heard the news. Her eyes were still red, and she opened the door for Tang Zhongyi. "Master Tang, you are here?" The nanny's eyes were still red. Tang Zhongyi and Mrs. Lin had met several times. He nodded and said, "Does your daughter know?" Mrs. Lin shook her head and could not help wiping her tears. How could she do that? Miss was such a person. When Tang Zhongyi walked into the garden, he was attracted by the girl sitting on the swing. She was wearing a white dress, and her waist-length black hair was gently draped behind her back, swaying gently with the swing. She wasn't wearing any shoes, revealing two delicate jade-like feet. Her head gently leaned against the side of the swing. Her eyes were peaceful, and her entire person was like a still painting. He suddenly understood why Uncle Ning and his wife doted on their daughter so much. They even asked their best friends to take care of her at the last moment of their lives. Such a girl simply doesn't seem like someone from this mortal world, Tang Zhongyi thought. A person like her should be well protected and placed in a well-built crystal castle. She should not be allowed to see the slightest bit of filth in this world. He couldn't control his footsteps as he walked forward. But it seemed to disturb her. The girl suddenly raised her head. The moment she saw the strange visitor, she panicked. Her dark eyes were filled with vigilance. Tang Zhongyi had no choice but to stop when he saw that the other party was about to tremble in fear. He tried his best to show a kind smile. "Your name is Ning Zhao, right? My name is Tang Zhongyi. Uncle Ning, your father Ning Dexin, asked me to pick you up." Hearing her father's name, Ning Zhao finally reacted a little. Her expression changed, but she still looked at him defensively. Chapter 206. At this time, Mrs. Lin also came over. She saw Ning Zhao and smiled lovingly. "Miss, this is Mr. Tang. He's sent to pick you up. Don't worry, he's not a bad person." Mrs. Lin had taken care of Ning Zhao since she was young, so Ning Zhao trusted her from the bottom of her heart. "Dad." She hesitated and looked at Mrs. Lin. "Where is Dad?" Mrs. Lin's eyes turned red when she heard this. She quickly wiped her eyes and said with a smile, "Mr. and Mrs. Ning are abroad on a business trip. They won't be back for a long time, so they want you to stay with the Tang family for a while." Ning Zhao was silent. Obviously, she didn't want to. Mrs. Lin saw this and said, "Miss, I'm going home. I can't take care of you in the future. Let the Tang family take care of you. Don't let Mr. and Mrs. Ning worry, okay?" Tang Zhongyi also knew that it was good to hide it from her for the time being. The two of them persuaded Ning Zhao together, and finally brought the reluctant Ning Zhao back to the Tang family. In addition to the eldest brother of the Tang family, Mr. and Mrs. Tang, and the 5-year-old young master of the Tang family, Tang Qian, were all there. "This is Ning Zhao, right?" Mrs. Tang didn't have a daughter. She fell in love with Ning Zhao at first sight. Ning Zhao was scared by Mrs. Tang's enthusiasm and hid behind Tang Zhongyi. Of all the people here, only Tang Zhongyi was slightly familiar to her, so she subconsciously chose to trust this man. Mrs. Tang was stunned for a moment before she realized that Ning Zhao was autistic. Previously, when she saw her quietly following her son, she didn't think of her in this aspect at all. Thinking of this, and thinking of her good friend's couple who died a few days ago, Mrs. Tang looked at Ning Zhao with softer eyes. "Come, I've already asked someone to prepare dinner. You haven't eaten yet, right? She said with a smile. The Tang family members all discovered an interesting phenomenon. Wherever Tang Zhongyi went, Ning Zhao would follow him. It seemed that in the entire Tang family, Tang Zhongyi was the only one she could see. Moreover, this big house made her feel very insecure. Afraid that her son would be annoyed, Mrs. Tang told her son in private to take good care of Ning Zhao. Tang Zhongyi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mom, don't worry. I'll take good care of her. He didn't even have enough time to feel sorry for her. While they were eating, Tang Qian's black eyes stared at Ning Zhao, as if he had discovered something interesting. Eat. His father, Tang Zhongqing, warned in a low voice. Tang Qian said in a low voice, "This sister's eating is so interesting. Dad, look, she only eats the dish in front of her. She eats a mouthful of rice, and then another mouthful of food. She hasn't changed at all." Gu Xingyin complained silently. She also wanted to eat something else, but autistic people had some compulsive habits and couldn't break down. For the sake of her persona, she was going all out. The Tang family had obviously noticed this long ago. When Mother Tang saw Ning Zhao like this, she felt her heart ache. She was about to reach out her chopsticks to pick up some food for Ning Zhao when someone beat her to it. Mrs. Tang looked at her second son in surprise. Did her son change his personality? She actually knew how to take care of people. Tang Zhongyi glanced at his little nephew and said, "Eat well. Also, she's not your sister. You should call her auntie." Tang Qian stuck out his tongue and obediently ate. Unfortunately, Ning Zhao didn't appreciate second young Master Tang's kindness. She still followed her previous steps and ate one mouthful of rice and one mouthful of food. She didn't even look at the extra food in her bowl. When she finished the bowl of rice, she put down her chopsticks. Chapter 207. After dinner, Tang Zhongyi wanted to take Ning Zhao for a walk. She didn't resist and obediently followed him out. The Tang family stayed in the room to watch them. Mother Tang sighed. "How can such a good little girl get such a disease?" Father Tang said, "I think her situation is okay. It's much better than some of the same situation I've seen before. It's just that her parents. Alas, let's hide it first." "Ning Zhao, my name is Tang Zhongyi. Call me by my name." Ning Zhao looked up at him. Tang Zhongyi looked at her expectantly. Who knew that Ning Zhao just glanced at him and continued to lower her head. Tang Zhongyi was a little disappointed, but he also knew that it was extremely rare for her to be close to him now, so he didn't force it. "Zhao Zhao, can I call you that?" Tang Zhongyi looked at the side of the girl's face. Of course, Gu Xingyin wouldn't answer him. "Then I'll take it that you agree, Zhao Zhao." Tang Zhongyi's eyes were full of smiles. After the walk, Tang Zhongyi took her home and took Gu Xingyin to the room that the Tang family had prepared for her. This room was exactly the same as Ning Zhao's room in the Ning family. The same color, the same furniture, and even the angle of placement were exactly the same. Obviously, the Tang family also spent a lot of effort on Ning Zhao. Tang Zhongyi actually didn't like this monotonous and boring color, but when he tried to change the color of the furniture, he was resisted by Ning Zhao. She wouldn't make a scene, but she was particularly stubborn in front of that thing. Her big peach blossom eyes stared at Tang Zhongyi, and she even clearly said her wish, which was rare. No change. Tang Zhongyi only felt that this kind of Ning Zhao was especially lively. Although she was quiet before, she always felt like she was in a different world from him. But now, she was like a real person with flesh and blood. He contacted the doctor who had been in charge of Ning Zhao's condition, and the results could be said to be very good. The expert said that Ning Zhao had actually recovered very well. She could almost take care of herself now, but she didn't like to talk, and didn't like to communicate with strangers. When Father Ning and Mother Ning were at home, she would smile and act coquettishly with them, almost no different from normal people. In the case of the Tang family, it should be an instinctive reaction to suddenly being in an unfamiliar environment. He was surprised to learn that Ning Zhao was dependent on Tang Zhongyi. After all, autistic people usually only relied on people close to them. Usually, it was their family members who were always with them. It was strange that Ning Zhao felt dependent on Tang Zhongyi, someone she had only met once. Tang Zhongyi thought about the expert's words in his mind. He looked at Ning Zhao, whose cheeks were a little red because of her emotions. He looked forward to the day when Ning Zhao would smile at him, act coquettishly with him, and call his name. Gu Xingyin saw that the man had no intention of leaving. She sighed inwardly and began to stand up. She went to her closet, opened the door, took out her clothes and closed the door. She went into the bathroom and turned on the water. After standing there for about 3 minutes, she turned off the water, closed the bathroom door, and began to take off her clothes. Tang Zhongyi stared at her series of actions with his mouth agape. He finally realized that she was going to take a shower. He coughed dryly and got up to leave Ning Zhao's room. Lying comfortably in the bathtub, she was finally alone. Ning Zhao's expression suddenly became lively, and she narrowed her eyes in enjoyment. Chapter 208. System. Ning Zhao is really tired. Gu Xingyin sighed. The system said, Host moi, I'm always with you. Gu Xingyin said, System, where did you learn these words? The system answered seriously. In the last world, when the host was playing games, I hacked into the network and found that those people like to talk like this. Don't you like it? Gu Xingyin said. No, you can do whatever you want. The system said, Okay. Host, love you moi. Gu Xingyin thought. It was really weird to say such cute words with a calm voice. When she came out of the shower, her face was expressionless again. Not long after Gu Xingyin came out, Tang Zhongyi came in. He saw that her hair was still dripping wet, but Ning Zhao didn't care about it and sat in front of the mirror in a daze. He smiled helplessly, walked up and took out a dry towel to help her dry her hair. As soon as he touched her body, the familiar lotus scent immediately surrounded Gu Xingyin. Her lover was actually him? Gu Xingyin was surprised. She didn't expect that the person Yang Huiying liked was her lover. Should she say that she had good taste or bad luck? Gu Xingyin fell into deep thought. What Tang Zhongyi saw was the girl sitting there obediently, allowing him to wipe her long hair. Occasionally, she would blink her eyes. Her exposed skin was a little red because she had just taken a bath, and she looked more lively than she was in the day. The two of them were silent, but they didn't feel awkward at all. When her hair was almost dry, Tang Zhongyi was a little reluctant to let her go. He put the towel away and thought about the news he got from Mrs. Lin. He knew that Ning Zhao should be resting now. Before he could speak, the person beside him automatically stood up, walked to the bed, put on her slippers, lay down, covered herself with the blanket, closed her eyes, and remained motionless as if she had fallen asleep in an instant. He couldn't help but laugh. He knew that this was a habit that Ning Zhao had developed over the years. He walked to the bedside and looked at her for a while. After saying goodnight softly, he turned off the light, closed the door and walked out. The next day, when Tang Zhongyi knocked on the door and came in, Ning Zhao had already tidied up and was sitting by the bed. He glanced at the quilt. It was folded neatly without a single crease. He knew that people like Ning Zhao had terrible obsessive-compulsive disorder in some aspects. As long as it didn't affect her normal life, he wouldn't ask her to change. After dinner, Gu Xingyin went to the piano room. Every day after breakfast, Ning Zhao would play the piano for an hour. Yang Huiying came to the Tang mansion at this time. Today, she came to apply for the position of tutor for the young master of the Tang family. The Tang family was a well-known rich family in the city. The salary of a tutor for the young master of the Tang family was several times higher than outside. This was a rare opportunity for Yang Huiying, who didn't have a very good family background. Miss Yang, the young master, is on the second floor of the house on the left. He is in the first study on the left. The housekeeper of the Tang family pointed the way for Yang Huiying. Thank you. Yang Huiying looked around and couldn't help but feel nervous. She followed the housekeeper's directions and unexpectedly heard the sound of the piano. Yang Huiying, who had graduated from a music school, knew that the person playing the piano was far better than her at piano. Chapter 209. Could there be someone else applying? Yang Huiying thought of this possibility, and her heart skipped a beat. The person playing the piano was clearly much stronger than her. If she wanted to compete with her, she had no chance of winning. She couldn't help but walk in that direction. Then she saw Gu Xingyin sitting in the piano room. Gu Xingyin's piano room was very elegantly decorated. The Tang family had specially built a special glass piano room for her next to the garden. As long as Gu Xingyin raised her head, she could see the sunlight and flowers outside. The dazzling hot sun outside did not affect her. Yang Huiying stopped and saw the girl playing the piano in the piano room. She wore a white dress and quietly lowered her head. Her white and slender fingers flew over the piano keys. A string of smooth and beautiful notes flowed out from her fingertips. She was fascinated by the music until Gu Xingyin finished playing. She noticed the piano under her hands. It was a Steinway trihorn. It was a treasure that every piano student dreamed of. However, very few people actually used it. Yang Huiying's heart relaxed. When she saw Gu Xingyin, she knew that this girl would not be her competition. Host, Yang Huiying has appeared. And I know. Gu Xingyin lazily replied. She paused for a few minutes and prepared to play another song. Yang Huiying came back to her senses. She had just walked to this place because she was looking for the person playing the piano. She looked around and found that she couldn't find her previous path. Looking at the time, she and the Tang family agreed to meet at 9 o'clock. There was still half an hour until now. Thinking about it, she walked to the door of the piano room and opened it. The girl in the room had already started playing another song. Yang Huiying walked in front of Gu Xingyin. Excuse me, do you know how to get to the Tang family's eldest young master's study? Gu Xingyin acted as if she didn't hear her at all. She didn't even raise her head and continued playing the piano. Yang Huiying was a little annoyed. Although it was impolite to disturb someone when they were playing the zither, this person's attitude was too arrogant. However, since she was the one asking for help, Yang Huiying patiently waited for Gu Xingyin to finish playing the song. She was prepared to ask her again when the time came. As she listened, Yang Huiying could not help but feel jealous of her talent. She looked even younger than herself, but the music she played seemed to have a soul. She tilted her head and looked at Gu Xingyin's beautiful side profile. She thought to herself, God is indeed unfair. Some people not only have an excellent family background, but also have extraordinary beauty. Even their talent is beyond the reach of ordinary people. If he had such talent, he was afraid that all the teachers in the academy would fight to take him in as a disciple. After Gu Xingyin finished her song, she heard Yang Huiying ask, "Hello, may I ask, how do I get to the Tang family's eldest young master's study?" Of course, Ning Zhao couldn't care less about her. Seeing the girl in front of her ignore her, as if she didn't exist, Yang Huiying was a little angry. Are rich people amazing? Looking down on people? Seeing that Gu Xingyin was about to start playing the piano again, she angrily reached out and pressed down on the piano keys. The girl in front of her seemed to be frightened and finally shifted her gaze to her. Meeting those dark and guarded eyes, Yang Huiying inexplicably felt a little uneasy. Chapter 210. Can't you hear me when I'm talking to you? Is it so difficult to tell me where the Tang family's eldest young master's study is? Yang Huiying's tone was not pleasant. Gu Xingyin seemed to be frightened. She stared straight at Yang Huiying. When she saw that Yang Huiying's hand was still on her piano, a trace of disgust flashed across her eyes. She reached out to push her away. Yang Huiying naturally saw her undisguised disgust. She was furious. What did she mean? The girl looked at her hand on the piano, as if she had seen something dirty. Gu Xingyin wanted to push her away, but she didn't want to. When Tang Zhongyi came here, he happened to see Ning Zhao pushing and shoving with an unfamiliar woman. He was shocked and almost ran over. Zhao Zhao. Yang Huiying only felt a strong force pulling her away, and she almost fell to the ground because of this. She angrily turned her head to see who was so ungentlemanly. But the moment she saw Tang Zhongyi, she lost her voice. She had never seen such a good-looking man. His facial features were handsome, his phoenix eyes seemed to be raised, and his thin lips seemed to be smiling. His eyes could easily arouse people's hearts. However, Tang Zhongyi's attention was all on Gu Xingyin. He asked worriedly, "Zhao Zhao, are you okay?" Gu Xingyin lowered her head and ignored him. Tang Zhongyi found that Ning Zhao would unconsciously dodge back when he walked closer. This knowledge made him irritable for no reason. He didn't want Ning Zhao to be afraid of him and reject him. It was all because of this culprit. He turned around and looked at Yang Huiying coldly. Who are you? Young Huiying only felt that the man's eyes were almost frostbitten. She felt a little wronged. It was obvious that the girl was rude first, but he put all the blame on her. But Tang Zhongyi's eyes were too aggressive. She tried to calm down and said, I was invited by young Master Tang to interview for the piano tutor of the Tang family's youngest young master. Tang Zhongyi glanced at her. Go back. You don't have to come to the Tang family. Young Huiying was dumbfounded. What did that mean? Was he driving her away? She refused to accept it. Why? You don't even know how good I am, and you want to chase me away? Because I'm the second young master of the Tang family. Tang Zhongyi looked at her indifferently, then turned to Gu Xingyin and said carefully, Zhao Zhao, shall we go back to the room? Yang Huiying looked at the man who was as cold as ice to her a second ago. And the next moment, he was so gentle and careful to the girl in white. She only felt that she had been greatly insulted. What's wrong with the Tang family's second young master? Just because he was the second young master of the Tang clan, he could drive people away without distinguishing right from wrong? Do you really know what happened just now? Why do you think it's my fault? Yang Huiying shouted unwillingly. Tang Zhongyi stopped. Yang Huiying thought that her words had worked, so she said proudly, I just asked for directions. Your female companion has been ignoring me. Is it so difficult to answer me? I just put my hand on her piano, and she came over to push me. Enough. Tang Zhongyi looked at Yang Huiying with disgust. You disturbed Zhao Zhao when she was playing the piano, and you even touched her things. Uncle Yuan, get someone to drive this woman out. The old housekeeper, who had appeared at some point, responded in a low voice. After Tang Zhongyi and Gu Xingyin walked away, 2 strong bodyguards came over and invited Yang Huiying out. Chapter 211. Regardless of Yang Huiying's struggle behind him, Tang Zhongyi just wanted his little girl to return to the way she used to be when she relied on him. Zhao Zhao. He wanted to get closer to her, but Gu Xingyin, who shouldn't have any reaction, walked a little to the other side. Tang Zhongyi remembered the expert's words. People like Miss Ning are most afraid of being provoked. Their hearts are hard to open, but it's easy to close again because of a provocation. That damned woman. Tang Zhongyi thought of the woman whose name he didn't know, and there was a burst of anger in his heart. He was afraid of provoking Ning Zhao, so he had to follow her carefully all the way. He sat with her for a while before he had to leave because of the company's business. Before he left, Tang Zhongyi specially told the housekeeper that there must be someone to watch Ning Zhao's side, and not let any random people disturb her. Because of what happened before, the housekeeper felt that he was not doing his job well and quickly nodded. At night, Tang Zhongyi came to Gu Xingyin's room. As expected, he saw her sitting on the side with wet hair. He shook his head and smiled, reaching for a towel. Seeing that Ning Zhao seemed to want to hide again, he held her down and didn't let her move. Don't move. If you don't dry your hair, you'll have a headache when you sleep. He knew that she could understand. Sure enough, Gu Xingyin slowly stopped moving and let him dry her wet hair. Tang Zhongyi put the towel aside and gently watched Ning Zhao obediently climb onto the bed, cover herself with the quilt, and close her eyes motionlessly. He looked at her like that, only feeling infinite tenderness in his heart. Suddenly his heart moved. Gu Xingyin only felt a soft thing gently touching her forehead. And then, there was a soft good night. Host, what should I do at this time? Gu Xingyin asked. System. Keep silent. People like Ning Zhao can actually act coquettishly with people close to them. Host can become more intimate with your lover after you become more familiar with him. Gu Xingyin only felt that her system was the role model of the system world. Not only did it never force the host to do anything against her will, it even encouraged the host to fall in love. Tang Zhongyi saw the girl's eyelids move slightly, but she didn't open them. Obviously, she acquiesced to his previous action. He was very surprised, but he didn't dare to disturb her. He just turned off the light for her considerately and left gently. Neither of them mentioned Yang Huiying's matter. Gu Xingyin knew Ning Zhao's character and wouldn't talk about it at all. Tang Zhongyi didn't take this matter to heart at all. As for the housekeeper, he didn't have time. Therefore, Tang Zhongyi and Gu Xingyin were surprised when Tang Zhongqing, the eldest young master of the Tang family, came in with Yang Huiying. Why is this woman here? He looked at Yang Huiying with an unfriendly expression. Tang Zhongqing looked at his brother in surprise. You know Miss Yang? Tang Zhongyi glanced at her. We don't know each other. We just have some unpleasant past. Tang Zhongqing smiled and said, You're a big man, so why bother with a girl? Let me introduce you. This is Yang Huiying, Miss Yang. She will be Xiao Qian's piano tutor in the future. Every afternoon at 3 p.m., she will come to teach Xiao Qian how to play the piano. Tang Zhongyi looked over and was about to speak when Tang Zhongqing blocked his brother's mouth with a sentence. Miss Yang saved our Xiao Qian on the road today. You didn't have any misunderstandings before, so let it go. Chapter 212. Since she had saved his nephew, Tang Zhongyi couldn't just chase her away. Tang Zhongqing asked the housekeeper to take Yang Huiying to Xiao Qian's room, while he took a call, and left in a hurry. Tang Zhongyi walked up to Yang Huiying and said, You saved Xiao Qian, so I won't argue with you about what happened before. Remember, don't get close to Zhao Zhao again. He left with Ning Zhao, leaving Yang Huiying alone with indignation. Yang Huiying was a sweet talker, and had saved Tang Qian before, so it was easy for her to win his favor. She found that she rarely saw Master Tang and Ning Zhao when she came to the Tang house every day. Actually, it was normal. Father Tang and the two brothers went to the company every day, and Mother Tang had her own business outside. Besides, they wouldn't spend time on a tutor. Ning Zhao didn't go out without anyone, except for practicing in the morning and taking a walk in the afternoon. One day, she couldn't help but secretly ask Tang Qian, Xiao Qian, there's a girl in your family who likes to wear white dresses. She's very beautiful and doesn't like to talk. Is she the daughter of your Tang family? Tang Qian blinked and said, Are you talking about Auntie Zhao Zhao? In fact, he preferred to call her sister Zhao Zhao, but his uncle didn't let him. Yang Huiying heard Tang Zhongyi call Gu Xingyin that way and nodded. Tang Qian said, Auntie Zhao Zhao isn't part of our family. Grandma said that Auntie Zhao Zhao is very pitiful. Her parents are no longer around, so Grandpa and Grandma brought her to live with us. He suddenly covered his mouth and whispered to Yang Huiying, Dad told me not to tell anyone, especially Auntie Zhao Zhao. She can't know. Ms. Yang, you have to keep it a secret for me. Yang Huiying nodded and said, Of course I won't tell anyone. She didn't think so in her heart. It turned out that the girl was just living under someone else's roof, but she still acted like a rich missy. Thinking of Ning Zhao's appearance that day, her heart skipped a beat. It seemed that she didn't know how to speak. She glanced at the innocent Tang Qian, lowered her voice and said patiently, I had a small misunderstanding with your Auntie Zhao Zhao, and wanted to apologize to her. But your Auntie Zhao Zhao didn't seem to care about me and didn't want to talk to me. Tang Qian liked Gu Xingyin very much. He was afraid that Yang Huiying would misunderstand her. So he quickly said, Teacher Yang, don't blame Auntie Zhao Zhao. Auntie Zhao Zhao never speaks in our house. Dad said that when she was born, God opened a window for her. So Sister Zhao Zhao didn't like to talk to others and only liked to be alone. He thought for a moment and added, But Sister Zhao Zhao plays the piano very well. It's a pity she can't teach me. Seeing that Yang Huiying didn't speak, Tang Qian thought that Teacher Yang was unhappy because of his words. He quickly said, Teacher Yang also plays the piano very well. I like it very much. Yang Huiying came back to her senses and said with a smile, Teacher Yang doesn't blame Qian. In that case, Lil Qian, let's treat our conversation today as a little secret between the two of us. We won't tell anyone, okay? Tang Qian nodded heavily. Yang Huiying already had an idea in her heart. According to Tang Qian, this girl named Zhao Zhao was clearly autistic. It was said that people with autism had some eccentricities and sharp personalities. No wonder Tang Zhongyi was so nervous at that time. When she thought of this, her ill feelings towards Tang Zhongyi actually disappeared. Chapter 213. Yang Huiying came to the Tang house at 3 in the afternoon every day, and Ning Zhao's schedule was to take a nap until 2 in the afternoon. After that, she would get up and walk for an hour, before going to the piano room to practice. It just so happened that it coincided with Yang Huiying's time to teach Tang Qian, so the two didn't have much time to meet. But one day, Yang Huiying deliberately came to the Tang house an hour early. Gu Xingyin was taking a walk. Tang Zhongyi wasn't at home, and several servants of the Tang family followed behind her. This was an order from the butler. They couldn't let Miss Ning stay alone. Before Yang Huiying could reach Gu Xingyin, she was stopped by a middle-aged woman with a kind face. Yang Huiying looked a little disapproving. This person called Zhao Zhao was clearly just living under someone else's roof. She was even worse than her. What right did she have to put on such airs? But she said with a smile, I had some misunderstandings with Miss Ning before. Today, I'm here to apologize. The servant who had been sternly warned by the butler not to let strangers get close to Miss Ning was polite, but the meaning behind her words was not at all clear. I'm sorry, Mississippi Miss Ning likes to be alone. Yang Huiying tried to persuade her, but she couldn't get close to Ning Zhao. She left angrily. She was interested in Tang Zhongyi, so she moved her thoughts to Ning Zhao. Looking at Tang Zhongyi's appearance that day, it was obvious that he was very concerned about Ning Zhao. If she could get along well with Ning Zhao, Tang Zhongyi's opinion of her would change. Unfortunately, she glared hatefully at the helpers standing not far behind Ning Zhao. These people were really old-fashioned. In the next few days, Yang Huiying didn't give up, but in the end, she helplessly found that Ning Zhao's path didn't work at all. She was too well protected by the Tang family, and there was no way to get close to her. But Yang Huiying also confirmed her thoughts. Ning Zhao did have autistic tendencies. She chatted with the servants and even deliberately raised her voice to attract her attention. But it was useless. Ning Zhao had been standing quietly by herself or walking forward. She didn't react to her or the servants at all. Looking at Ning Zhao like this, Yang Huiying only felt a lot better. Look, so what if you have this proud beauty and outstanding talent? Not only that, you've even lost the most basic and most normal ability? But on the other hand, she still felt that it was unfair. Why? For someone like Ning Zhao, even if she was in such a situation, even if she had lost her parents, she could still receive the meticulous care and love of the Tang family. At the very least, she had always been a carefree young lady, unlike herself, who had to work hard for herself and her life at such a young age. On this day, Tang Zhongyi came back from work. Just as he entered the door, he met Yang Huiying. He looked straight ahead and was about to leave when he heard Yang Huiying shout behind him, Mr. Tang. Tang Zhongyi turned his head. What was this woman trying to do? Yang Huiying glanced at Tang Zhongyi. She felt that after not seeing him for a few days, this man seemed to be even more charming. She felt that her face was a little hot and said shyly in a low voice, Last time I quarreled with Miss Ning Zhao, it was my fault. I didn't know she had that kind of illness. Shut up. Tang Zhongyi frowned and looked at her sternly. Who told you that Zhao Zhao is sick? She just doesn't like to talk. Yang Huiying was caught off guard by his reprimand. She felt wronged and suppressed her anger. Anyway, it's my fault. I'm here to apologize to you. Tang Zhongyi didn't comment. There's no need to apologize. I still say what I said before. It's best if you don't appear in front of Zhao Zhao again. Chapter 214. Yang Huiying helplessly watched Tang Zhongyi leave without looking back. She only felt wronged in her heart. She was considered a beauty, and there was no lack of people pursuing her. How could she lower herself to apologize? Not only did he not appreciate it, but he also spoke so coldly. But, thinking of Tang Zhongyi's face, Yang Huiying could not blame him. She could only transfer her anger to Ning Zhao. It was all this woman's fault. If it were not for her, she would not have left such a bad first impression on Tang Zhongyi. Gu Xingyin was playing the last song, when she was suddenly reminded by the system. Target Yang Huiying's hatred towards the host has increased to 30%. Gu Xingyin's fingers pressed the last key, and the melodious music stopped. Why? She was puzzled. Even if they had a conflict before, Yang Huiying's hatred towards her was only 10%. How could it suddenly increase by 20 points? The system flashed for a while and replied. The system has detected that Yang Huiying's main emotional direction is jealousy and anger. Jealousy of Gu Xingyin was understandable, but anger? She suddenly thought of something. Is Yang Huiying attracted to Tang Zhongyi? The system said. When Yang Huiying met Tang Zhongyi, She had abnormal heart rate, a small rise in body temperature, and an increase in brainwave activity. After testing, it is consistent with the possibility of attraction in humans. Gu Xingyin knew what this anger situation was. Thinking about it carefully, she was not wrong to take the blame. Zhao Zhao. Tang Zhongyi walked over. Gu Xingyin smiled at him for the first time. Tang Zhongyi was surprised and happy. Did this mean that Zhao Zhao was closer to him? He was happy and tentatively held Gu Xingyin's hand. He was happy to find that her hand slightly retracted, but did not take it back. Although Gu Xingyin's smile only appeared for a short moment, it was enough for Tang Zhongyi to be happy. He held Gu Xingyin's hand all the way back. In the evening, Tang Zhongyi wiped Gu Xingyin's hair as usual. After Gu Xingyin lay on the bed, Tang Zhongyi gently gave her a goodnight kiss and slowly retreated. On the other hand, Yang Huiying didn't give up. She bumped into Tang Zhongyi several times in an attempt to attract her attention. However, other than impatience, Tang Zhongyi did not have any other emotions towards this woman. Unfortunately, Yang Huiying saw several times that Tang Zhongyi, who looked at her coldly, carefully held Ning Zhao's hand. The two people's fingers were interlocked as they slowly walked in the garden. Occasionally, Ning Zhao would sit in the transparent piano room and talk about the piano, while Tang Zhongyi quietly looked at her from the side. The tenderness in his eyes could not be melted. In this way, Gu Xingyin did nothing but watch as Yang Huiying's hatred towards him grew higher and higher. Yang Huiying came out of Tang Qian's room. She should have walked in the direction of the door, but for some reason, she turned and walked towards a familiar place. Sure enough, she heard a familiar piano sound. As soon as she walked to the door of the piano room, the sound of the piano stopped abruptly, and then the person playing the piano stood up. She stood aside and watched Ning Zhao come out. It wasn't the first time she saw Ning Zhao, but every time she saw her, she was amazed by this girl's appearance. The warm sunset quietly sprinkled on Ning Zhao's white skirt, coating her with a layer of warm halo. Looking at Ning Zhao like this, Yang Huiying thought of a poem. She walked in the sunlight, with the fragrance of the wind and plants. Whose eyes were stunned. Even she couldn't help but be absent-minded when looking at such a person, let alone a man like Tang Zhongyi. Chapter 215. Yang Huiying dodged to one side. She watched Ning Zhao slowly walk towards her side. Then, the servant of the Tang family behind her seemed to have something to do. He looked around, and found that there was no one around. Suddenly, he left in another direction. Only Ning Zhao was left in such a big garden. Of course, there was also Yang Huiying hiding in the dark. Looking at Ning Zhao, who seemed to know nothing, Yang Huiying's heart suddenly flashed with a vicious idea. She knew that autistic people couldn't be stimulated, otherwise, it was very likely to have serious consequences. This was probably the reason why the Tang family hadn't told Ning Zhao about her parents until now. Now there was no one around. If she told her that her parents had died, what would happen to this girl? Yang Huiying's heart flashed with this idea, as if it had taken root and couldn't be pulled out. On the one hand, she despised herself, but more importantly, she was secretly excited. She wanted to destroy this girl. In this way, Tang Zhongyi would look at others, right? Just as Yang Huiying's thoughts were turning, the servant of the Tang family, who had just left, had come back. She hid in the dark and watched them slowly walk away and disappear at the end of the road. She had to think about this matter carefully. She couldn't put herself in it. Gu Xingyin was sitting alone in the room when Tang Zhongyi pushed the door in. "Zhao Zhao," he shouted. Gu Xingyin slowly turned her head to look at him. Tang Zhongyi was very happy. His Zhao Zhao had now slowly accepted his existence. When he called her, she would turn her head and sometimes even smile at him. This was a unique honor in the Tang family. Zhao Zhao could only occasionally get a look from the 5-year-old Tang Qian to others. He took out a big thing from behind him. Gu Xingyin was surprised to find that the clothes worn by the rabbit, who was as tall as her, the headband on her head, and even the shoes on her feet were exactly the same as her own. Obviously, Tang Zhongyi had specially asked someone to make it. Tang Zhongyi looked at his girl with her peach blossom eyes wide open. Her eyes were full of rare curiosity. She even reached out and tried to touch it. Sure enough, it was effective. Tang Zhongyi's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. Her name is Xiao Xiao. She will sleep in the same room as Zhao Zhao in the future. Tang Zhongyi saw that Ning Zhao really liked her and handed her over. Gu Xingyin struggled to hold the doll that was thicker than her, but her eyes were full of joy. Seeing her like this, Tang Zhongyi was also very happy. He had been in contact with the specialist in charge of Ning Zhao. The specialist said that Ning Zhao's condition had been very stable, and now it was continuing to improve. If this continued for a long time, one day, he would be able to return to the level where he could communicate normally. Gu Xingyin was also trying her best to cooperate with the specialist's treatment. She didn't want to be a silent shell for the rest of her life. It was just that she couldn't return to being so conspicuous all of a sudden. Tang Zhongyi's surprise was yet to come. As usual, he gave Ning Zhao a goodnight kiss and was ready to leave. Unexpectedly, his sleeve was gently pulled. He stopped in his tracks and turned around to look at the person on the bed in disbelief. Then, the girl who originally had her eyes closed slowly opened them, straightened up, and imitated him by gently kissing his forehead. Then she looked up at him, her eyes full of smiles. Chapter 216. Tang Zhongyi was almost stunned by this huge surprise. It was like a person painstakingly cultivating a seedling, hoping that one day it would blossom into a flower. But when he woke up, he found that the yard was full of flowers. His burning gaze locked onto Gu Xingyin, and his voice even trembled a little. Zhao Zhao. Gu Xingyin actually wanted to respond to him, but the system kept reminding the host not to be too aggressive with the bad guy setting. So she could only look at him with a smile. Although she didn't say anything, Tang Zhongyi was satisfied. He reached out and held Gu Xingyin's hand, then kissed it. Have a good rest, good night. Gu Xingyin had a good night's sleep, but Tang Zhongyi was so excited that he almost didn't sleep at all. The next day, the Tang family noticed that Ning Zhao had changed. When people put food in her bowl during meals, she would no longer ignore them. Father and Mother Tang would sometimes call her, and she would respond. Tang Qian was the happiest because Auntie Zhao Zhao smiled at him. Auntie Zhao Zhao looked so beautiful when she smiled, and Tang Qian was intoxicated. Father and Mother Tang were also very happy. Mother Tang thought of her friend who had passed away and her eyes turned red. Seeing Zhao Zhao like this, I'm relieved. This child is getting better. If Suchi saw this, I don't know how happy she would be. Suchi was Ning Zhao's mother's name. Father Tang thought more. He always felt that his second son treated Ning Zhao differently. Have you noticed that our Zhongyi seems to be paying too much attention to Zhao Zhao? When he said this, Mother Tang also reacted. Wasn't that right? Although Tang Zhongyi didn't have much of a nightlife, he usually went home late or didn't go home at all. Ever since Ning Zhao came to the Tang family, he came home on time almost every day. As long as he was free, he would accompany Ning Zhao. She heard from the servants that the second young master didn't let others dry his hair. And Ning Zhao was also very close to him. Thinking of this, Mother Tang didn't feel good. Zhao Zhao isn't even an adult yet. This brat, I'm going to ask him. She had a straightforward personality. As soon as Tang Zhongyi came home, he was notified that his wife was looking for him. Mom, what's the matter? He took off his suit jacket. Mrs. Tang looked at her son with pride, then remembered what happened during the day. She didn't keep him in suspense and directly asked, Zhongyi, let me ask you, what do you think of Zhao Zhao? After all, they were family members who had lived together for more than 20 years. Tang Zhongyi only needed to think for a moment before he understood what his mother meant. She probably realized that something was wrong. Mom, I won't hide it either. He stood up and looked directly at his mother. I like Zhao Zhao. When she's an adult, I'll be her lover. When she's 20, I'll be her husband. You. Mrs. Tang didn't know what to say to her son's self-righteous attitude. Zhao Zhao is only 16 years old, Mrs. Tang said after holding back for a while. Our relationship has been nurtured since we were young. It's just right. Tang Zhongyi said calmly. Zhao Zhao doesn't know anything. What if she doesn't like you in the future? What if she falls in love with someone else? Mrs. Tang could hear the certainty in her son's voice, which made her even more worried. Tang Zhongyi's expression did not change. There is no such possibility. She will only like me, and can only like me. Chapter 217. Xiao Qian, what are you doing? As soon as Yang Huiying arrived at Tang Qian's room, she saw him holding a white furry rabbit in his hand. Xiao Qian, do you like rabbits? She asked with a smile. Tang Qian shook his head. I'm a man. I don't like this kind of thing. But Auntie Zhao Zhao likes it. Tang Qian's dark eyes rolled twice. Uncle gave Auntie Zhao Zhao a big white rabbit. Auntie Zhao Zhao likes it very much. I also use my pocket money to buy a little rabbit. After I change it into the same clothes as Auntie Zhao Zhao, I'll give it to her. Yang Huiying's smile faded. Ning Zhao again. Why did everyone like her and want to please her? She said casually. Didn't you say that your Auntie Zhao Zhao ignored people? If you give it to her, she probably won't know. Tang Qian immediately retorted. No way. Recently Auntie Zhao Zhao will smile at me. Yang Huiying was shocked. Wasn't Ning Zhao autistic? How come she was already better? She was a little absent-minded the whole afternoon. When she taught Tang Qian, she even played a few wrong notes. Tang Qian shook his head and imitated the tone of a kindergarten teacher, saying that she wasn't serious. After 5 o'clock, Yang Huiying walked towards Ning Zhao's piano room. She watched Ning Zhao walk over from afar and found that she was still the same as before. Tang Qian's condition was probably just rare. It was very likely that Ning Zhao was recovering. Yang Huiying only felt the sense of crisis in her heart getting heavier and heavier. Ning Zhao's appearance could make Tang Zhongyi focus all his attention on her. If she improved in the future, doesn't that mean I don't even have the slightest bit of chance? The more she thought about it, the more flustered she became. The thoughts that had been in her mind became clearer. In the next few days, Yang Huiying had been secretly observing Ning Zhao's movements. She found that every time Ning Zhao came out to play the piano, someone would follow her. Sometimes, Tang Zhongyi would also accompany her personally. The Tang family's servants never left, so there was definitely no chance outside. Finally one day, Yang Huiying waited for an opportunity. Gu Xingyin played the piano as usual, and returned to her room, accompanied by the Tang family's servants. Ordinary people were not allowed to enter her room, so those people only sent her to the door and left. Tang Zhongyi hadn't come back from work today. Yang Huiying stood behind a pillar in the hallway. Ning Zhao's room was far away from the masters of the Tang family. Because she couldn't be disturbed, Ning Zhao was the only one living in this area. Usually, the servants of the Tang family were warned by the owner of the villa not to come here easily. Therefore, it was very quiet here. There was no one here. Yang Huiying hesitated for a while, and finally decided to push the door open and go in. Gu Xingyin sensed that someone had entered and turned around. When she saw Yang Huiying, she was a little surprised. Why did she come here? Looking at the girl in front of her, who was panicking like a deer, the malice in Yang Huiying's heart grew. Are you Ning Zhao? She slowly approached Ning Zhao, who was sitting on the chair. This distance already made Ning Zhao feel unsafe, but she didn't stop. Yang Huiying listened to her own malicious tone. Do you miss your parents? Seeing that the girl was attracted by her words, she sneered. You want to see them, don't you? But let me tell you, you will never see them again. They are dead. Chapter 218. Ning Zhao didn't seem to understand her words and looked at her in a daze. Yang Huiying was afraid that she didn't understand, so she deliberately said, It means that I will never appear in front of you again and disappear. Seeing the girl's face suddenly turn pale, a twisted pleasure rose in her heart. She was afraid that she would be discovered if she stayed any longer, so she quickly left the place. Tang Zhongyi was in a good mood today. He specially went to a famous cake shop in the city to customize a rabbit-shaped cake. Thinking of Zhao Zhao's sparkling eyes when she saw the cake later, he felt comfortable all over. When he got home, dinner hadn't started yet. Ning Zhao should be in the room at this time. He opened the door of Ning Zhao's room. Zhao Zhao, I brought you something good. Before his voice fell, the scene in front of him made his pupils shrink in fright, and the cake fell to the ground with a clang. The room, which had always been clean and spotless, looked like it had been ransacked at this moment, and all kinds of things were broken. However, Tang Zhongyi didn't notice this at all. His girl was standing barefoot in the room at the moment, and in front of her was a broken full-length mirror. Her white jade-like feet were stepping on the fragments. Blood dripped. Tang Zhongyi only felt that the fragments didn't stab Zhao Zhao's feet, but his heart. He quickly walked over. What's wrong, Zhao Zhao? He wanted to pick her up. However, Ning Zhao, who was usually docile and quiet, seemed to be crazy at this moment and rejected his approach. She stepped back step by step and stepped on the broken mirrors. She seemed to feel no pain, but Tang Zhongyi, who witnessed this scene, was furious. He didn't care about her struggles and picked her up. He couldn't let her hurt herself like this anymore. Ning Zhao struggled hard in Tang Zhongyi's arms and screamed in pain. Tang Zhongyi carried Ning Zhao downstairs, and all the people passing by were shocked by Ning Zhao's situation. What's wrong? Mrs. Tang rushed over and saw Ning Zhao's feet. She asked anxiously, What's wrong with Zhao Zhao? Tang Zhongyi shook his head. Ning Zhao's situation had always been stable, and he didn't know why it suddenly became like this. At this moment, Ning Zhao, who was in his arms, suddenly started sobbing softly. Her sobs were mixed with intermittent "daddy, mommy." Everyone present heard it clearly, and they all fell silent at the same time. Tang Zhongyi glanced at the people in the room and walked out with Ning Zhao in his arms. I'll take Zhao Zhao to the hospital first, and then I'll come back to settle this. Who told Zhao Zhao about this? Because Ning Zhao refused to cooperate, Tang Zhongyi could only bring a chauffeur from home and hugged her without letting go. Zhao 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 Zhao. He kept whispering in her ear and kissing her on the forehead. I'm here, I'm Tang Zhongyi, I'm here. Ning Zhao ignored him completely. She stopped struggling and just cried by herself, occasionally calling out for her parents. When they arrived at the hospital, they sent Ning Zhao to the ward. Because the patient refused to cooperate, the doctor could only give Ning Zhao a sedative. Tang Zhongyi had been guarding by her side the entire time. He stared at her face that had become obedient because of her deep sleep. But the hostility in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Who is it? He told Zhao Zhao about this matter. Chapter 219. Didn't I tell you that Ning Zhao can't take too much stimulation? Why did you let her be like this? The expert in charge of Ning Zhao's condition was an old man with a white beard. Ever since Ning Zhao was very young, the Ning couple had visited him. It could be said that he watched Ning Zhao grow up. In terms of affection, it was not much worse than his own granddaughter. He received a call from Tang Zhongyi and rushed over as soon as possible. It's our negligence. Ning Zhao seems to know about the death of her parents and is very emotional. Tang Zhongyi whispered. Mr. Zhang, what should we do? Tang Zhongyi asked. Mr. Zhang sighed. Let's wait and see what happens when Ning Zhao wakes up. Gu Xingyin didn't actually faint. She was communicating with the system. System, what do you think I should do when I wake up? Gu Xingyin asked. There is relevant information in the host's mind. Everything is possible. The host can randomly choose a situation. The system couldn't make up its mind. Fortunately, you can block perception. Otherwise, Gu Xingyin remembered the feeling of her feet stepping on broken glass. Although she wasn't afraid of pain, no one would like it. After Yang Huiying left with the news of Ning Zhao's parents' death, Gu Xingyin was still struggling for a while about how to behave. Later, she decided to go with the flow. Ning Zhao had to know about the death of her parents. Being autistic didn't mean that she was stupid. Ning Zhao would be suspicious one day if she didn't see her parents for a long time. Since this day would come sooner or later, it was better to follow Yang Huiying's wishes and trap her. Ning Zhao was in a coma for more than 30 hours. When she woke up, it was already the morning of the third day. Tang Zhongyi noticed that the person on the bed moved. He almost held his breath as he looked at her. He watched Zhao Zhao's long and thick eyelashes flutter twice. Then, she opened her eyes, revealing a pair of dark and clear eyes. Unexpectedly, it was quiet. Tang Zhongyi breathed a sigh of relief. He was afraid that when Ning Zhao woke up, she would still be as crazy as before. He was really scared. But soon he realized that something was wrong. Ning Zhao, who had woken up, was just staring blankly at the ceiling above his head. There was no other reaction at all. Suddenly, a wave of panic surged in his heart. He forced a smile and called out, Zhao 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 Zhao. However, the person on the bed didn't even look at her. It was clearly a warm and pleasant day, but Tang Zhongyi felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. His entire body was cold from the inside out. He called old Mr. Zhang over with a trembling voice. When Mr. Zhang heard about Ning Zhao's situation, his face turned a little gloomy. After he came to see the situation in person, he sighed secretly. What do you think? Tang Zhongyi looked at Mr. Zhang expectantly. Old Mr. Zhang shook his head. Zhao Zhao has been too stimulated. She has subconsciously rejected everyone. She has closed her heart. Tang Zhongyi only felt that it was so difficult to speak. Then in this situation, is there any way? Old Mr. Zhang pondered for a long time. In general, in such a situation, there are very few things that experts like us can help. It's best to have someone she trusts to communicate with her every day and guide her patiently until one day she is willing to open her heart. Chapter 220. Tang Zhongyi was silent as he sent away Mr. Zhang, who shook his head and sighed. He carried Ning Zhao, who was like a puppet, out of the hospital. Back home, the Tang family was waiting for news. They all had their own things to do, so it was impossible for them to stay overnight like Tang Zhongyi. Mrs. Tang was the first to greet him. How is Zhao Zhao? She looked at Ning Zhao quietly staying in Tang Zhongyi's arms, and breathed a sigh of relief. But looking at her son's expression, it didn't look like he was fine. Tang Zhongyi didn't speak, but the Tang family quickly noticed Ning Zhao's strangeness. She didn't react to the outside world at all. This was different from when she first arrived. At that time, Ning Zhao didn't speak and didn't pay much attention to others. But she had her own routine and knew what to do on time every day. When she saw something she liked, such as a piano or flowers and plants, she would be happy. But now, Ning Zhao even needed Tang Zhongyi to personally bring a spoon to her mouth for her to eat. Only then would she know to open her mouth and eat. Mrs. Tang turned around and started to cry secretly. The eldest son of the Tang family, Tang Zhongqing, said in a deep voice, I've already asked all the servants in the house. They didn't mention anything about her parents in front of Zhao Zhao. Tang Zhongyi said coldly, Then how did Zhao Zhao know? Could it be that Uncle Ning and the others came in a dream? Tang Zhongqing was also puzzled. He had someone check the whereabouts of everyone from 5 to 7 in the afternoon 2 days ago, and found that everyone had a record. No one went to Ning Zhao's room. I'll take Zhao Zhao back to her room first. Seeing that Ning Zhao was almost done eating, Tang Zhongyi got up and took Ning Zhao's hand. Hey Zhao Zhao, I'll ask Mrs. Lin to help you wash up later. Mrs. Tang thought of something and said, No need, I'll do it. Tang Zhongyi said in a deep voice. Mrs. Tang. Mr. Tang frowned. Ridiculous, Tang Zhongyi. Do you know what you're saying? Tang Zhongyi looked at Ning Zhao gently. I can't trust Zhao Zhao with anyone anymore. The members of the Tang family watched in shock as Tang Zhongyi led Ning Zhao away. Tang Zhongqing was dumbfounded. Mother Tang, on the other hand, suddenly felt relieved. Forget it, let him be. That brat told me a long time ago that he only recognizes Zhao Zhao in this lifetime. He said something like that to you? Father Tang glared at her. You didn't even tell me. However, after thinking about it, he felt that this was also fine. With Zhao Zhao's appearance, if she were to marry into another family in the future, they wouldn't feel at ease. Their own 2 sons, in terms of character, could still be at ease. A family like the Tang family didn't need a daughter-in-law of high status to keep up appearances. Since Zhongyi was willing, then let him be. Tang Zhongyi brought Gu Xingyin to the room and let her sit on the bed alone. Wait for me, I'll run the bath for you. He didn't make a move just because Gu Xingyin didn't react. Every time he did something, he would inform Gu Xingyin, as if the 2 of them were having a normal conversation. He prepared the hot water and dripped the essential oil. Then, he pulled Gu Xingyin into the bathroom and prepared to take off her clothes. From the looks of it, he was going to give her a bath directly. Gu Xingyin, who appeared to be in a daze but was already cursing like crazy on the inside, was speechless. Although they had been husband and wife for a long time, it was still shameful for her to personally help him bathe. Chapter 221. Fortunately, it was impossible for Tang Zhongyi to have any thoughts about a patient, and Gu Xingyin's acting skills had reached the point of perfection. The 2 of them finished everything in silence. Good night, Zhao Zhao. Tang Zhongyi gently kissed Ning Zhao's forehead. Looking at Ning Zhao's motionless appearance, he only felt a sting in his heart. His Zhao Zhao would no longer look at him with a smile, pull his sleeve and give him a good-night kiss. Tang Zhongyi lay beside Ning Zhao, and saw that Ning Zhao had no reaction to him lying in bed. Seeing her close her eyes, Tang Zhongyi turned off the light, and opened his eyes in the darkness for a long time. Contrary to him, there were familiar people and familiar breaths around her. Gu Xingyin soon fell asleep. In the following days, Tang Zhongyi put aside the company's affairs and accompanied Gu Xingyin wholeheartedly. Every day he took care of everything for her, pushed her in a wheelchair for a walk, and even took her to the piano room. Zhao Zhao, don't you like to play the piano? Play a song for me, okay? He coaxed her softly. Gu Xingyin sat in front of the piano. She looked at the familiar things in front of her, and her eyes seemed to turn slightly. Tang Zhongyi was ecstatic. He didn't dare to disturb her. He could only hope that the piano could make her come out. Gu Xingyin reached out and placed his hand on the piano keys. However, she only played a few notes messily before she stopped moving. Tang Zhongyi was very disappointed, but there was only a gentle smile on his face. He wanted Ning Zhao to try again, but found that Ning Zhao seemed to be a little resistant, so he could only give up for the time being. On the way back, the two met Yang Huiying. Yang Huiying had done such a thing, so she hadn't dared to ask about Ning Zhao's recent situation these days. But she clearly felt that the atmosphere in the Tang family was very dull these days. She guessed that something must have happened to Ning Zhao. She didn't dare to face Ning Zhao, so she walked around the piano room every day. Unexpectedly, Tang Zhongyi pushed Ning Zhao around the entire Tang family's mansion today. Seeing Ning Zhao sitting in a wheelchair and seemingly unaffected, she was still surprised. Tang Zhongyi didn't like this woman from the bottom of his heart. He originally planned to pretend that he didn't see her and directly leave with Zhao Zhao. But unexpectedly, Ning Zhao, who had been quiet as if she didn't exist, suddenly became agitated the moment she saw Yang Huiying. She glared angrily at Yang Huiying, and her mouth kept calling out for her parents. Yang Huiying only felt that the other party's eyes were filled with deep-rooted hatred, nailing her to the ground and making her unable to move. Tang Zhongyi was shocked by this scene. It wasn't until Ning Zhao seemed to want to stand up by herself that he realized that her foot was still injured. He bent down to comfort the agitated Ning Zhao and shot a sharp gaze at Yang Huiying. Yang Huiying felt a chill run down her spine, but Tang Zhongyi didn't say anything. Instead, he covered Ning Zhao's eyes and brought her back to the room. Yang Huiying heaved a sigh of relief. She had thought that Tang Zhongyi was going to do something to her. However, she had underestimated the situation. The next day, when she came to Tang Qian's room, there was only one person in the room. Mr. Tang. She looked at the man she missed. She was a little happy, but there was also some uneasiness in her heart. Tang Zhongyi turned around and looked at her expressionlessly. Miss Yang, can you explain what you did to Zhao Zhao 4 days ago in the afternoon? Chapter 222. Yang Huiying was a little flustered. No one knows what you've done. She comforted herself. She looked at Tang Zhongyi in confusion. What 4 days ago? What happened? Tang Zhongyi hated her face. Not many people know about Zhao Zhao's parents. We checked one by one, and you're the only one. He stared at Yang Huiying. Xiao Qian told me that he told you about it, and you had an agreement that no one was allowed to say anything about it. Yang Huiying forced herself to calm down. I know something about Miss Ning Zhao. But Mr. Tang, didn't you not let me get close to Miss Ning? Everyone in the Tang villa knows that I, Yang Huiying, have to take a detour when I see Miss Ning. Tang Zhongyi looked at her. Then how do you explain Zhao Zhao's reaction when she saw you? Yang Huiying defended herself. How would I know? You have to ask Miss Ning about this. Maybe I had an unpleasant encounter with her before, so she instinctively didn't like me. Tang Zhongyi looked at her silently for a while. Since Zhao Zhao doesn't like you, you don't have to come to the Tang family in the future. It's best not to let me know that you really have something to do with this matter. Yang Huiying was not convinced. Why? You fired me for no reason. Tang Zhongyi had already slammed the door and left. The Tang family's housekeeper handed an envelope to Yang Huiying. I'm sorry, Miss Yang. The Tang family has been busy recently, and the young master's upbringing. Yang Huiying snatched the envelope from the housekeeper's hand. Don't make excuses. Isn't it just not coming? This girl doesn't care. Tang Zhongyi stood in front of the window and watched Yang Huiying's figure disappear from the Tang family. His eyes were deep. Do you think that if you don't admit it, I can't do anything? Yang Huiying's recent days were quite difficult. Although her talent in the music academy was not top-notch, it was still above average. However, there were various activities in the academy recently, and the tutors seemed to have completely ignored her and didn't take her out at all. For students like her, the most important thing during school was to be taken out by their tutors to see the world. At the same time, it was an opportunity to show themselves. If a large orchestra took a fancy to them, it was also a good way out. Especially for people like Yang Huiying, who had an ordinary family background and could only rely on herself. If the tutors didn't take her out, it could be imagined that she wouldn't have any chance to stand out until graduation. She lost her cool and went to look for her tutor. The reply he received was very perfunctory. I think your foundation is still not very solid. If you have the time to think about this, why don't you spend more time strengthening your foundation? Yang Huiying wanted to curse. Foundation? His foundation was not solid. If his foundation wasn't solid, how could he have been admitted to this nationally renowned music academy? However, she didn't dare to do so. To these students, the teachers were existences that held the power of life and death in their hands. No matter how disgusted he was, he still had to put on a smile on his face. Coldly watching Yang Huiying walk out, her teacher shook his head. Who knew how this female student had offended the Tang family? He couldn't protect her. Zhao Zhao, isn't it beautiful here? Tang Zhongyi and Ning Zhao were lying on a beach. The expert said that it was best to take Ning Zhao out for a walk more often. In the past 6 months, Tang Zhongyi had taken her to travel around. Of course, he chose places with beautiful environments and few people. For example, right now, the two of them were on a private beach belonging to the Tang family. Chapter 223. Tang Zhongyi's efforts were not in vain. At least for half a year, Ning Zhao was no longer completely ignoring people. When he opened his mouth to ask a question, Ning Zhao would look at him, then lower her head and remain silent. Although he didn't get a response, Tang Zhongyi was very satisfied. Compared to before, it was a lot better, wasn't it? Gu Xingyin was also waiting. She could only let Ning Zhao recover slowly. The slower Ning Zhao recovered, the deeper Tang Zhongyi's dislike for Yang Huiying. And Yang Huiying's life would be more difficult. It's just that this man was wronged. Gu Xingyin sighed in her heart. Then speed up the progress a little. Ning Zhao's situation improved by leaps and bounds after the end of the trip. She seemed to have returned to the way she was when she first came to the Tang family. She could take care of herself, dress up her little rabbit, and pick out her favorite clothes from a pile of clothes in the wardrobe. On the first day they returned to the Tang family, Ning Zhao smiled at the Tang family who welcomed them back. Tang Zhongyi's hands were trembling slightly. The next day, Ning Zhao even took the initiative to ask to go to the piano room to practice. When the melodious music sounded again, Tang Zhongyi felt that he seemed to hear the sound of flowers blooming in the depths of his heart. Everything was getting better. Ning Zhao could live independently, but because of the previous lesson, Tang Zhongyi didn't dare to let her sleep alone in the room. So as before, the two still slept in the same bedroom. In the past 6 months, the Tang family had also fully seen Tang Zhongyi's deep affection for Ning Zhao. They had nothing to say about it. They could only wish the two of them that there would be no more twists and turns in the future. Good night, Zhao Zhao. Tang Zhongyi routinely kissed Ning Zhao's forehead. Ning Zhao's closed eyes suddenly opened. She raised her body and kissed Tang Zhongyi's forehead gently. Good night. Her voice was very small, so small that it almost made people think it was an illusion. But Tang Zhongyi still heard it, and for a moment, he almost had an impulse to cry. Zhao Zhao, you just said, good night to me? He was afraid that he was dreaming, but the little girl seemed to be shy. She turned around, facing him, closed her eyes, and went to sleep. Tang Zhongyi was left standing there, laughing foolishly for a while. In the end, He raised his hand and gently hugged the person in front of him. The person in his arms moved, but did not break free. Tang Zhongyi hugged his baby in his arms, as if he was hugging the whole world. The figures of the two fit together firmly, as if they were born to be together like this. Tang Zhongyi had never been so satisfied. The next day, Gu Xingyin woke up in the arms of her lover. As soon as she opened her eyes, Tang Zhongyi, who had been looking at her, made a sound. "Good morning, Zhao Zhao." He saw that his little girl's eyes were still a little dazed. Her long, curly eyelashes fluttered a few times before she finally opened them completely, revealing a pair of dark, clear eyes looking at him. "Good morning," Gu Xingyin replied out of habit. Then, he suddenly realized something. Oh no, this was Ning Zhao's body. Tang Zhongyi only felt that today was extraordinarily beautiful. This was the happiest morning greeting he had ever received in his life. Gu Xingyin thought for a moment. Fortunately, there was the previous situation as a foreshadowing, and her situation was not too abrupt. The two people finished washing and came to the table. Since they had recovered a lot, Gu Xingyin was not stingy to give them another surprise. So the masters of the Tang family looked at the girl in the white dress with a smile and said good morning to them. Chapter 224. Mrs. Tang almost dropped her chopsticks. "Zhao Zhao," she was surprised and happy. She looked at her son standing next to Gu Xingyin. At the moment, he was focused on Ning Zhao. That was great. She raised her hand and gently wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Her son finally saw the light at the end of the tunnel. The Tang family was happy and harmonious. But Yang Huiying's life had been difficult. She was going to graduate next year. She watched her classmates go to concerts one by one. Many of them who were not as good as her started to sign contracts with bands. But she had no place at all. She couldn't get through to the mentors, so she started to recommend herself. But she didn't like low-level bands, and they didn't like her either. Yang Huiying was so worried that her hair turned white. Also, after graduation next year, every graduate had to submit their own work. The school would choose the best work to be performed at the graduation ceremony. Yang Huiying's music school was one of the best in Z country. Many international musicians and bands would be invited to the graduation ceremony. Students who could get on the stage of the graduation ceremony often had a bright future. But for herself, Yang Huiying looked at the white paper under her hand. She grabbed it into a ball and threw it into the wastepaper basket beside her. She had to start preparing for her graduation work now, but she was so distracted now. How could she make any good work? "Huiying, I'm going to be an intern at Shihai Band. Have you found a place?" It was Xiao Lin, her roommate. Xiao Lin and Yang Huiying had always been on bad terms. This time, she was obviously mocking her. Yang Huiying was the only one of the 4 people in the dorm who was still running around. Yang Huiying put on a fake smile and said, "No, a few small bands came to me, but I rejected them. I'm not in a hurry." It was obvious that she couldn't find a good band, but she still put on such airs. Shaolin sneered. She finished the last stroke of her eyebrow, picked up her bag and went out. Yang Huiying was left alone in the dorm. She grabbed her hair in annoyance and buried her head deep in her arms. In the end, she still found a small band that wasn't famous. She had no choice, she couldn't always stay in the academy. This way, she could be closer to the audience and gain more knowledge. She comforted herself. The small band didn't have any rules and didn't have any fixed performances. Often, they wouldn't have a chance to perform for a few days or even half a month. Sometimes, when business was good, they wouldn't rest for a few days. Yang Huiying was about to go crazy. She was tired to death every day. When she returned home at night, how could she still have the mood to compose? However, it was rare for a student from a famous school to appear in the orchestra. The conductor was very proud of her and would let her perform every time. Yang Huiying felt like a monkey in a circus. She regretted her blindness more than once. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have joined such a small band, even if she had to work in a big band. However, the contract had already been signed. No matter how much she disliked it, she had to endure it. Every day, the sound of the piano coming out of the Tang family's mansion became lighter and lighter. Ning Zhao's condition was also recovering at an extremely fast speed. She was now able to communicate with people normally, but she still knew how to read people. Moreover, she became Tang Qian's newest piano teacher. Although most of the time, she was the one playing the piano while Tang Qian blinked and listened. When Mr. Zhang came to the Tang family and saw Gu Xingyin, he was surprised and said that it was a miracle. Chapter 225. Auntie Zhao Zhao, this is for you. Tang Qian was holding a bunch of lilies that he had just picked from the garden. Gu Xingyin bent down to take it and smiled at Tang Qian. She still didn't like to talk and wouldn't talk to strangers. But she was already very close to the Tang family and would even act coquettishly sometimes. Tang Qian's mother once returned home from a trip, and Gu Xingyin even went up to her and gave her a hug. Tang Qian's mother heard the girl's soft voice call her mother. She agreed with tears in her eyes. She was very happy to be Ning Zhao's mother. In the afternoon, it was time for Ning Zhao to practice the piano. Tang Qian sat by the side and listened to Auntie Zhao Zhao play the piano. He didn't really understand complicated things. He only thought that Auntie Zhao Zhao played the piano very well and looked very good when she played. Little Tang Qian always remembered what his little uncle said to him. Little Qian, when uncle isn't around, you have to spend more time with Auntie Zhao Zhao. She likes you the most. Auntie Zhao Zhao liked him the most. Tang Qian blushed at the thought. Auntie Zhao Zhao was prettier than the prettiest teacher in the kindergarten. He saw that Auntie Zhao Zhao often lowered her head and wrote something on a piece of paper. Tang Qian curiously walked over and found that it was full of dense notes that he couldn't understand at all. Auntie Zhao Zhao, what are you writing? Gu Xingyin's face showed a slightly shy smile. She blinked at Tang Qian and shook her head without saying anything. This was a song that Ning Zhao made in the original plot. Gu Xingyin slightly modified it. This song would be Gu Xingyin's surprise for her lover, and also a choice for Yang Huiying. She would give Yang Huiying a chance. Her choice would also determine her future. The peaceful and beautiful days passed quickly. When Tang Qian was finally 6 years old and could enter primary school, Ning Zhao was also about to become an adult, and Yang Huiying was about to graduate. However, her graduation design was still not settled. Yang Huiying was alone in the small rented house outside. She was so worried that her hair was about to fall off. The boring performances of the small band day after day killed her inspiration. In her current state, if she submitted a design, it would be a problem for her to graduate successfully. How could she accept this? She was so hungry that she grabbed her purse in frustration and walked towards the mall. Tang Zhongyi brought Ning Zhao and Tang Qian out of the door. The current Ning Zhao was no different from an ordinary person, just by looking at her appearance. She gradually stopped rejecting crowded places. Tang Zhongyi was ecstatic and would intentionally take her out. Today, she went out to buy something for Tang Qian. He was about to start school, and Tang Zhongqing's company was very busy. Tang Zhongyi happened to be off today, so he took him and Gu Xingyin out. I want Transformers, I want Spider-Man. Tang Qian walked as he calculated what he wanted to buy. He didn't forget to hold Gu Xingyin tightly with one hand, because his uncle had seriously told him that he was a man. Auntie Zhao Zhao was a little shy, so he had to protect her. Tang Zhongyi could not help but laugh. Little Qian, you're going to school, not opening a toy store. Tang Qian stuck out his tongue. At this moment, Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. The system notified him that Yang Huiying was nearby. Chapter 226. Yang Huiying came to the mall to buy some necessities. She never thought that she would meet an acquaintance here. Tang Zhongyi, the man who had left a mark in her heart for the first time. In the past year, she had been forcing herself not to think about him. She didn't expect to meet him in such a place. There was a girl standing beside her. Gu Xingyin's back was facing her, so Yang Huiying didn't recognize her. She subconsciously thought that Ning Zhao couldn't be here. However, when Tang Qian excitedly pulled Gu Xingyin to say something, and she turned around to smile, Yang Huiying saw her clearly. How could it be? Wasn't Ning Zhao autistic? Didn't she not want to be stimulated and couldn't see strangers? Didn't her condition worsen after she told her about her parents' death? Then who was this girl who was smiling so freely in the middle of the bustling crowd? Yang Huiying only felt indignant. She had paid the price of staying away from the Tang family, but Ning Zhao didn't seem to be affected at all. How unfair was this? She felt like a shameless voyeur. She silently followed behind them and watched them enter the luxury stores that she didn't even dare to think about. She watched the three of them being intimate. Knowing that Tang Qian was complaining that he was hungry, they entered a dessert shop. Yang Huiying followed them in and sat next to them. There were 2 large pots of plants in front of the 2 tables. "Hello, what would you like to order?" The waiter looked at her with a smile. Yang Huiying glanced at them and pointed at one. She didn't know why she wanted to follow them, but there was always an indignant feeling in her heart. It made her look like she was torturing herself to look at the girl. She had always been jealous of smiling happily. Gu Xingyin obviously knew that Yang Huiying was sitting behind her. It just so happened that this gave her a chance. She reached out to take out her phone from the small white rabbit bag she carried with her. No one noticed that a white piece of paper floated out and landed under Yang Huiying's table behind her. "Don't play with your phone when you're eating." Tang Zhongyi looked at her helplessly and dotingly. Gu Xingyin stuck her tongue out at her and opened the game without hesitation. Anyway, this man was just saying. He couldn't bear to take away her phone and make her unhappy. Only Yang Huiying saw the paper. She glanced at it. It was densely packed. It seemed to be a music score. She calmly picked up the piece of paper and put it into her handbag. Her heart was beating a little fast. "Miss, your coffee." The waiter's voice pulled her back from her thoughts. She absent-mindedly stirred the coffee in the cup until Tang Zhongyi and the other 2 finished eating and left. The coffee in the cup was already cold. She couldn't recall the past. Instead, she hurriedly returned to the small house she lived in. She even forgot the purpose of buying things. After locking the door, she carefully took out the piece of paper and read it slowly. The more she looked, the faster her heart beat. She was very sure that this music score wasn't a well-known piece. Moreover, the entire piece was handwritten, and there were many traces of modification. There was no doubt that the composer was talented. Yang Huiying had seen Ning Zhao's talent in piano before, and it had fallen out of Ning Zhao's bag. This music score was most likely Ning Zhao's own work. Chapter 227. Yang Huiying walked absent-mindedly. Her contract with the orchestra ended today, and this could be considered her last performance. The location was a bar, and it wasn't too messy inside. After all, a bar that could afford to hire an orchestra was considered a bit high class. It was just that the people inside were all sorts of freaks and monsters. Yang Huiying didn't think that she would be fancied by a drunkard. "This girl looks pretty good." The fatty with the oily face looked at Yang Huiying drunkenly and chuckled. He then shouted at the person in charge of the orchestra, "How much for her to accompany me?" The manager of the orchestra had a difficult expression. Some members of their orchestra would occasionally have such services, but Yang Huiying was different. She wasn't an official member of the orchestra, and she was a student of a famous music academy. He said with a smile, "Sir, Miss Yang isn't a member of our orchestra. She's a student of Qingsong Academy. You should know Qingsong Academy." The fatty ignored his words and looked at Yang Huiying with wide eyes. He sneered. "Qingsong Academy? Her? Do you think I'm an idiot? What kind of people are the students of Qingsong Academy? Why would they come to your lousy orchestra to be a piano player? Let me tell you." Yang Huiying only felt that all the customers in the bar were looking at her. This feeling made her feel very ashamed. If she could get everyone's recognition at the graduation ceremony, she wouldn't be like today, bullied by these vulgar people who only had a few bucks and pointed at as if they were watching a show. Her wavering heart finally made a decision. In the end, under the manager's apologetic smile, the fatty cursed and found another female musician. Yang Huiying didn't think that there would be such a dirty deal. She resisted the feeling of disgust and hurriedly finished playing the song and went home. She took out the white paper from the bottom of the drawer. "Sorry, Ning Zhao. Anyway, you're living a life of luxury in the Tang family. This kind of work is just icing on the cake for you. Moreover, if you can create a work like this, you can naturally create a second one. And right now I urgently need it to save my life. This is your work. Yang Huiying's teacher looked at her in disbelief. Yang Huiying nodded. It took me nearly a year to write it out. Teacher, is there a problem with this? Her tutor read the score over and over again excitedly. After a while she said to Yang Huiying, No, you're a genius. I haven't seen such an exciting work in years. I will recommend you to perform on stage at the graduation ceremony at the end of the month. He had already made up his mind. With such a talented student, even if Tang Kor wasn't happy with her, he couldn't let her go unnoticed. Yang Huiying walked out of the tutor's office with excitement in her heart. She knew that she was halfway to success. Soon, it was the end of the month. On that day, Yang Huiying put on the clothes she had meticulously prepared, put on the most exquisite makeup, and stood on the stage of Pine Forest Academy. In front of her were countless internationally renowned musicians and first-class orchestras. Next, I'll be playing my piece, Sunshine. She bowed elegantly and slowly placed her fingers on the piano keys. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.